All right, it is 6 o'clock, so we're gonna get started. For those who are still collecting food, just grab a seat there. We're just gonna do some introductions first of who we all are, and then we'll get into some questions too. So to begin with, if everyone could say what their name, department, major, your climate-related interests, what drew you to COP? That's a lot. Oh yeah, Kaylee, go ahead.
I think Jency was gonna just like
Wants to introduce the whole thing.
yeah.
Okay, go for it.
And then we'll get into that.
All right.
Preview.
Go ahead, Junsu.
Okay, I'll make it quick. Hello everyone. I'm Junsu. I'm the chief of staff to this year's COP30 delegation, and welcome to the second week of broadcast from Belém. So I feel like elephant in the room. I feel like I'm glad everyone's okay. I don't know what to say. Just Tara, take it away, please.
Yeah. So out of curiosity, did the news hit you all right away from BBC and NPR and so forth? New York Times? Did you get alerts on your phone?
Well, personally, I just saw like a headline article, but I only just watched the video that Professor Brace sent on the group chat. So
okay. So for those who might not be aware, there was a fire in the blue zone today. So we're really, half of us were in the blue zone and evacuated, and they also evacuated the green zone. So we're a big group today because the group in the blue zone wasn't able to stay for the whole day, and even though the COP convention is opening up this evening, it's mostly going to be for the negotiators. So that's what happened. Everyone's safe. And it was definitely an event that everyone went through. But we're all safe in here and happy to share our experiences of COP with you. So like I said, we'll just do some introductions to get started. I'm Tara Pisani-Guerreau. I'm one of the faculty members on this delegation. I'm a professor in the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences, and I direct environmental studies. And I was drawn to COP because it's in Brazil this year. It's 5 years to 2030, which is a really important date for turning emissions around. And so I knew it was going to be a pretty consequential COP. Like if we can't get it done now, it's going to be really hard for future. Like, so the urgency is so high right now. Also, we're in the Amazon, and that was an intentional decision to show the world what's at stake here, not just the biological diversity of the Amazon, but the cultural diversity and indigenous people. So it's a really special place to have a COP, and I'm excited to be here. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Edson.
Hello, everyone. I'm Edson Severnini. I'm a core faculty of the Schiller Institute and also a professor of economics. And my research is in energy and environmental economics, so it's really interesting to be here following the negotiations and understanding better, how the parties are actually bringing their concerns. I was drawn to COP in Brazil. Of course, I'm from Brazil, so it's a delight to be in my origin country. Also because I have done some research about deforestation in the Amazon, so it's really interesting to be here. I had never been in this area. Also, I have done a lot of research on fossil fuels and the consequences of using fossil fuel for electricity generation in the US. So I was very curious about how, countries would potentially agree on transitioning away, let's just use the language that they were using from fossil fuels. So that's the part that I'm following the most. And because of recent research on just transitions, I was also curious about the processes. And so that's what I have following. I'm going to pass this to Tony.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tony Edgington. I am a PhD candidate in Earth and Environmental Sciences. My research is in coastal and fluvial or rivers geomorphology. So I study sediment and water interactions. So I was drawn to this COP in Belém because of the fact that it is along the coastline and at the mouth of two rivers, and we're here in the Amazon basin. So Belém and other cities around here face flooding issues, and as well are threatened by sea level rise. And so I was really interested in following the adaptation dialogue that's going on with COP30. In particular, there are some uh, uh, action items that they're trying to get together from this COP to make this list of indicators for how we can adapt to climate change and finance climate adaptation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Delphine Garreau. I am a senior undergrad. I am a major in international studies with 2 minors, one in environmental studies and the other in religion and American public life. A few issues that I've been following or interested in at this COP. One is gender and women's justice issues. And then the other one is probably learning about the political geography of international cooperation, learning about how negotiations take place, especially as an IS major. It's all been very interesting to me. And yeah, especially following women's issues within just transitions. I'll pass it to Abby.
Hi everyone, I'm Abby Bergman. I'm a second year PhD student in formative education over at Lynch. What am I supposed to say? My interests in what drew me to COP are my research is all about integrating STEM education across humanities in early childhood. So I was particularly interested in how issues of climate can be translated into the education space and how climate literacy can be developed as well in STEM disciplines.
I'm Lydia. I'm a junior studying finance. What I've been most interested about at this COP is climate finance, particularly for LDs and how we help those that are the most vulnerable transition away from fossil fuels.
Okay. My name's Mackenzie. I'm a senior undergrad student studying global public health and the common good in the School of Nursing. And what drew me to COP is that a lot of the research I've done in the past and am doing now has had to do with global adaptation strategies and the ways that people, especially Indigenous people, are responding to serious environmental challenges, mainly flooding and deforestation. But I'm excited to be here to learn more about the health impacts of the environmental changes that we're experiencing and how people are trying to combat these. So I'll pass it to Margaret.
Hi everyone, I'm Margaret, and I'm a senior studying biology and public health as double major. And my research is grounded in using a bacteria to recycle lithium batteries. So I'm pretty interested in all like the science technologies and how they impact the COP and the negotiations. And at the same time, as a public health major, I'm also interested in house inequities and also like how, like they said, like everything is imposing to like the indigenous people or like vulnerable populations, women and girls. So in general, I'm just really interested in sustainability with gender equality.
Hi everyone, I'm Emma Brace. I'm an assistant professor in engineering and also environmental studies. And my research is on biofuels and other bio-based products, how we develop processes that are better at making them. And I was really excited for COP to be in Brazil because I'm very interested in how Brazil has developed biofuels and bioproducts over the years and have personal ties here. And coming into COP, I was really interested in seeing the talks on the bioeconomy and the role that it plays in helping combat the climate crisis.
So the next question, maybe we could do kind of rapidly of just like your initial impressions of COP30 in week 2 and what you're hearing, seeing, just kind of your initial take on it. Emma, why don't we go in that order? We'll just sort of go around, yeah, and then, yeah, since you've got it.
My initial impression is that among observer delegates like us and other like NGOs and people from educational institutions, vibes are high or have been high before today. because I think definitely myself, but I got the sense from other people too that we feel really happy to be in a space where climate change is real and people are working on these issues. But then the sense that I've gotten from actual negotiators is that vibes are low and they haven't made a lot of progress. So it's been interesting to see sort of these like two things playing out depending on what your role is here at COP.
I think what hits me most is like the culture here and how like the indigenous culture with the local culture are integrated in both the green zone and blue zones, and also how like different countries also brought their culture in. I think that in general just giving a better sense of like how we collectively working on the sustainability issues and also like environmental problems.
Yeah, I guess my impressions were very similar to Margaret's. I was going to talk about how interesting it is that I feel like this is one of the first COPs where Indigenous people's voices are being heard at such a large scale, either with protests, but also in the negotiation room. There's a lot of talks, even though Indigenous people aren't necessarily involved in the negotiations themselves. I feel like they're being brought up as a significant driver for climate change or for climate remediation strategies.
In both the green zone and the free zone, which are accessible to the public, I've been really excited to see how civil society is engaging. Also attended a talk with some members from Bangladesh, and they shared images of their own grassroots efforts, and it was really inspiring to see how members of civil society are engaging.
I think on a similar note, I've been really interested in how the presence of youth has been visible at this COP, especially in the pavilion areas and in the side events. I feel like I'm seeing a lot of youth and the decision makers, people in power who tend to be older, coming to conversation together and intergenerational dialogue. So it's been really great to see like the connection between like who's implementing, who's practicing, and who's making these policy level decisions.
For me, I would say my first impressions are just how much of a privilege it is to be here. I was at the Green Zone for the first time today, and just seeing the lines of local people just trying to see the events going on in the civil side of things, that's like easily accessible. It's such a privilege to be able to sit in the background of negotiations, hear from higher up people on their initiatives around the world. So to be a student here with limited qualifications is absolutely a privilege. So I'm grateful to be here.
My initial impression is that I'm quite impressed by the negotiators and the people working kind of around the clock, essentially every day to come to an agreement between parties. They are working till midnight or sometimes past midnight every night, hours of just of compromising and negotiating and doing these meetings with other parties, and it's for the benefit of everyone. And so it's quite impressive to see the stamina that they've been doing this work at for the last 2 weeks here. And again, it kind of humbles you and makes you feel really privileged to be a part of the event and to observe it. And despite kind of the mixed feelings of success, feeling great about the progress or not, it seems like there has been a lot of progress still in a lot of these meetings that the negotiators have, acknowledged. But despite the fact that there's still negotiations going on.
Yeah, my first impressions are related to the theme of the COP, which is mutirão. I love that idea that people come together, parties come together to address an issue that affects us all. And I think seeing the diversity of points of views expressed, at least in the conference, whether it's in the negotiation rooms or in the side events, I think it's great to have those themes in the agenda. Whether it's going to translate into the final document or not, at least it's there, it's being discussed. And I think it was sidelined in the past, and they are becoming part of the mainstream discussion at COP. So I love that. And one more thing, I feel like representation really matters. And I think in this case, seeing people that usually are not part of the process, I feel like it's great. And if there is anything that I would take with me, and I hope COP continues with, is this process that brings people together. It's difficult, it's messy, it feels it's not making progress, but that's how we actually create durable solutions.
Abby? Next.
Oh, did you already went?
I already went.
Oh. Thank you. Oh, so my first impressions of this COP are that it's really encouraging to see countries from all over the world who are so dedicated to working on this problem. It's hard to be an American citizen and not see our own country here, but it's also refreshing to see that there's no debate about whether or not there is climate change, or that everyone's so committed to working on this. And I guess one of the things that I noticed at this COP, and as opposed to COP26 that I went to, is that there's a lot of conversation on collaboration between nation states, sharing information, collecting data, and sharing like what works to scale up change and solutions that really make a difference. So the urgency is really high, and I've been really encouraged to see the sort of breaking down silos. But I'm also, like I said, a little sad that the US isn't part of this place, and the United States is not brought up very much in the meetings that I've gone to. So that's kind of a strange part of this experience. So moving to our next question, what about COP do you think that people should be paying attention to back at home? Like anything that they may not see in the news, or something that strikes you that you want to share? And we'll just sort of, whoever would like to answer can do
that. I would say pay attention to what local people are saying the impact of this is. I think that there's been a lot of, I think Kenzie mentioned, there is a large Indigenous participation in this COP, whether that's inside the Blue Zone with protests, or just attending events or running events, and protests outside, but also like in the Amazon, and to hear what their perspectives are, if they're not in the negotiation rooms, what they think the impact of this COP being in Belém has been. Has it worked? Has it not worked? I think paying attention to those perspectives is probably one of the most valuable.
I think one element that might not come across in the media, and probably not even in the final document, it's the recognition that climate, water, land use are all related, which I think in previous COPs, they were treated in isolation, and finally they got together. It's very simple, a legal framework to actually allow the UN to bring together the secretariats. I think you're not going to see too much in the media, but I think it's a huge step forward in terms of breaking the siloed discussions that we're having, even though these are completely intertwined problems.
One thing I would say to just keep your eye on, whether or not there'll be a lot of questions like, was this a successful COP or not? And one indicator of the success will be in whether or not countries were able to increase their nationally determined contributions, which they made before the conference, like the week before many of them released their NDCs. And an emissions gap report is available online. So it's the 2025 one. And it basically said that if all the countries do what they say they're going to do, that's if they do it, at the end of the century will be between 2.3 and I think 2.5 degrees Celsius, which is higher than 1.5. That's if they do that. And then if it's just business as usual, it's 2.8 degrees Celsius, which means we're not meeting the Paris Accord, which was set 10 years ago. So hopefully the pressure from hearing from Indigenous people poorer countries that are feeling the burden. That's what happens in the big plenary events. The countries that are most impacted really come out and explain what's happening, and that countries need to pony up more money. They need to make their contributions more ambitious. So look for that afterwards. Like, were we able to nudge that number down any more than what we came into the conference? I think that's kind of an important indicator.
And something else that I think has been interesting that I've learned about while being here is that not necessarily in the negotiations, but in the side events and in the green zone, there's been a lot of advocacy and activism around war and human conflict, specifically in Palestine, specifically in Ukraine. That has been really interesting to hear about because it's not necessarily brought up in environmental conversations at such a great scale, but I think it's really important to bring attention to these issues because while there is horrible and devastating human casualty, it's also completely destroying the natural environments in these countries and in these spaces and affecting the indigenous peoples there. It's doing essentially irreparable damage that is not often talked about in negotiations of environmental capacities, but I think the attention that it's getting here is going to have some really interesting implications for other spaces. So
adding on to that, I think something that I've been seeing a lot of is the ties between social issues more broadly too than war, and conflict with environmental issues. Hearing at the high level segment from Jamaica and the Dominican Republic only a few weeks after the hurricanes was really impactful to that point of, what this means economically, and the non-economic costs of climate change too, the cultural costs, the social costs, as I was saying too.
So I want to actually jump to the third question that we have here is, and I ask Edson to maybe start us off on what does it meant for COP30 to be held in Brazil, either for the event or for you personally? So I know this is personal for you.
Yes, it's very personal. I think like also remembering Rio 1992, so it's like so many years later, but being held in a different place, a place that people don't pay too much attention to, like in terms of cities, like there are cities in the Amazon, and I feel like it is a privilege to be here and to be participating of the event. But also, I feel like it's important the participation of the population. I think the way it was planned in the city was quite clever to bring a lot of people into the fold. Maybe they don't know exactly what is happening in the negotiation rooms, but they are there and they understand that what is at stake. I feel like that's quite interesting. When I came to Brazil, like recently to see my family before COP, nobody in my family knew though about COP, and so it's also a reminder that we have to be vigilant and talk about this with people we know, whether it's family, friends. I feel like lots of people don't mention this to close friends, and they might not even be aware of what is happening. So I think like making this, it was quite interesting today with the fire. I got so many messages from my family. I was like, I didn't know you were paying attention to. And it was almost immediately after, which means they are somewhat paying attention to what is being discussed. And my dad keeps sending me like, oh, I saw this, I saw that. So I feel like it's important. It's a reminder that we have, no matter where it is, that we have to be talking about this.
Anyone else? I have been really struck today, particularly about the difference in perspective. So we have heard, so there's been a lot of local people participating in the green zone and in the free zone, which is amazing to see. And we've heard from people who've been to COPs before that you don't typically see so many local community members engaging in COP. So that's really wonderful. But then I was texting with my mother-in-law this morning, and she saw it totally different and was like lamenting that it should actually be more accessible to Brazilians. And so it kind of depends on who you're talking to, whether or not they see it as being a lot of public participation or not a lot. I don't think anyone's wrong. It's just differences in perspective. And even like earlier today, Abby and I were with someone we met here at COP from Australia, walking around and talking about why in Belém instead of in like Rio or Sao Paulo, and talking about how we think it's really important for people to see like authentic Brazilian life, not just maybe shinier, nicer parts of the country. And so I think it's really important that it's here. And some of the stuff that's happened in the COP, the flooding, the fire, is very like representative of the crisis that the Amazon and other parts of the world are facing.
Can you explain the flooding part?
Yes. So a lot of the green zone is a giant tent, essentially, a very well-engineered, impressive tent, but a tent nonetheless. And so there's torrential downpours basically every day. They're not long, but they are intense. And so some of the pavilions flooded on Monday, I think, and had to be closed for a while.
Electricity went out.
Has gone out a few times. So you're sitting in a room and it goes dark. And that's representative of the climate crisis and things that we're all going to be facing with like higher frequency in the years to come.
Adding on to that as well, when I was, I think, seeing in the minute you step out of the blue zone too, and you're just in the city, it's very visible like what's at stake in these conversations that are going on outside. So being able, to walk around where there's Amazonian birds and tons of flora and other animals as well, in the city, not going out at all. And also like Kaylee and I today went to a theater that was, made possible from the riches of the rubber industry and like what's being extracted too. So just the stakes I feel like are very stark and apparent everywhere, and which I'm not sure has been present in other COPs.
So I heard a panel, I think it was yesterday, on it was a side event titled oh my gosh, now I'm forgetting. It was indigenous alternatives to green colonialism. And was that what it was? Yeah. And the Amazon is not for sale was like the main, I guess that was the main title. And something that they were talking about pertaining to this question was that, of course, it's relevant and important that we're highlighting what's at stake by having COP30 be in the Amazon. But it's also important to remember that the people in the Amazon are not the problems. That's not the problem here. It's the people that are coming in, the countries that are participating in COP. And so I just thought that was an interesting perspective, that yes, we're focusing on the internal of the Amazon deforestation and what we're seeing happening, but the problem of combusting fossil fuels isn't occurring within the Amazon, it's external. So I thought that was just something to keep in mind.
I'm asking Delphine to expand on the theme of colonialism that's come up in a variety of sessions here. So
yeah, sure, and anyone can add on. But I think that what they were trying to get at within that panel is the greater power imbalances within international cooperation, who's within the negotiating rooms, who is creating the processes that have developed to COP, who's in the Security Council, who's making those greater decisions, and then who are those decisions impacting in reality on the ground. Did you want to add on to that maybe?
Margaret.
Similarly, I went to like a higher level event this morning. It's about like because today is a very special day for Brazil. It's like the Black Awareness Day, like basically Black Community Awareness Day. It's just basically like quite connected to like the slavery history here, and also like oppression on indigenous people and also like women and girls. And it's really exciting to see like a European Union secretary sitting with a princess in the Amazon and also a princess from the small island sitting together and just talk about like what they think about and what their insight is. And more importantly, I think the EU representative, he's like really like regretting about like the colonialism histories. And I feel like that's really fascinating about like how people like know like recognize what they did wrong, but also trying to like correct themselves and also like improve in the future. So that's where I see a lot of hopes.
So I know we want to get to some of your questions. I just have one more question, and that's how has being here at COP in person shaped how you understand the negotiation process? And if I could ask Tony and Lydia to start us off.
Yeah, I think it kind of, my answer kind of goes back to what I said before. My first impressions is that it really is a marathon of negotiating and compromising. And it's really interesting to sit in and observe some of these negotiations, or what they call informal consultations, where these parties kind of come up with their interventions to the text that they're writing for the agreements, and how they're able to really constructively come to solutions. Like it's quite impressive. You know, sometimes it does devolve and it gets a little bit more high stakes and a little bit more intense or petty sometimes, but overall I think it's like it really opened my eyes to how cooperative parties are at this stage and in this venue, and how it really has led to a lot of advancement and progress in these negotiations and COPs.
Yeah, I want to echo what Tony said. Having no experience or like exposure to the negotiation process before, it was a little daunting to say the least. After the fire, I ran out with a Swedish delegate, and he also it was his first COP, and he also expressed like how hard it was to follow even for him in his first COP. So that made me feel a little bit better. But it's just hard to like hear about not a lot of progress being made after so long, and it feels like there's really nothing going on. But on the flip side, because there's not much going on, there is so much like difference of opinions, and that means everyone is being represented, or like a lot of people are being represented, because if everyone is agreeing, then I would just feel like there needs to be another voice being heard in the room. So yeah, it's been very interesting to follow.
I watched a negotiation today, and I was like pretty surprised because I expected to be like going on for hours, but it's actually like just 30 minutes. And basically like 3 countries proposed like 3 different solutions for one I think either like treaty or rule. And but like the one of the countries just proposing on like we should like postpone this to like COP32, and all the other agrees, which I feel like is not really a good model for like negotiating, as like postpone all the problems to the future.
One quick thing, I think it made me appreciate the outcomes of negotiations, and also seeing that sometimes everybody feels that like they are losing, right? But at the same time, that what compromise might feel like. You are losing something, you're gaining something. So I went to a negotiation yesterday where at the end it was so anticlimactic, like people were just, okay, it's done. And the person presiding over says, well, I think that's how it feels like. Everybody feels a little disappointed, but also happy about certain things. If you are in a situation where there's so many divergent, visions for the same thing, I don't think you're gonna get out of the negotiation room super happy, because you have to concede certain things. And I feel sometimes not only for coffee but in life, we have the impression that one side has to win, and I don't think that's what you see here. And I'm sure we're gonna see something very close to that at the final document.
So something I'll add is that I was at a press conference with the UN General secretary, president. Okay, thank you. I've been getting confused. There's a lot of people, and she was taking questions, and a 13-year-old boy was able to ask her a question, and he questioned her about access to, climate. If we're putting all this money toward climate finance, how are the people actually getting it? And so she took a moment. She did answer his question, but just saying like, yes, like your ability to ask me this question is why we need to have these things in person. So like applauding him for his own advocacy. And so I think while there is like, very limited access to these spaces, the ability to observe and like the obligation to have these negotiations be observed provides kind of like these informal moments that are very powerful.
So Junsu, do you want to have some people there ask us questions?
Yes. Anyone have any specific questions? Introduce yourself when you ask a question.
Hi, everyone. My name is Molly. Your insights have been so wonderful to hear so far. I'm curious if you could explain what the free zone is. I haven't heard of it before, and I would love to learn more.
Yeah, I haven't been there. So Abby, were you in the free zone? Who went to the free zone?
It's another space that is local to and specific to this COP. It doesn't always exist, or it's in Belém, put on by I think a number of different cultural groups. We went to it yesterday. We saw a local like cultural show put on by like very young kids, which was very sweet. And then we also like they're showing films and different cultural events that are just another space for people to go. It's also more downtown in the city. So I think it brings brings these topics to a whole different group of people as well.
The free zone is also super interesting because along with sort of the cultural side, there's a lot of civil society side and how while there's negotiations going on with like some of the heads and the experts of like their topic, there's different groups on the ground actually going out and making the work happen and doing the work with different communities. So hearing from them and like their projects within the community was just a different level of the environmental conversations that we've been having. So it was cool to see that too.
Another question?
Hi, good night, everyone. Hope you guys are enjoying Belém. It's me.
Hi, Dominique.
So introduce yourself. My name is Dominique. I am a sophomore studying environmental studies and econ. I was also there in week 1. So my question is that I was following pretty intently the just transition kind of like discussions. Also noticed that there are quite a bit of momentum in terms of like the activist, like civil society side on that issue, which I guess makes sense because from a civil society side, I went to COP with that interest. And I think it's definitely taken up like a much larger momentum than it has at previous COPs. And so I'm wondering, now being there, I think, several of you guys have mentioned, like observing like different negotiations and conversations around it. What are your guys' biggest takeaways, just like broadly, about how the conversation is around just transition? I'm personally interested to see how it might have evolved from like week 1 to week 2. So I'm interested to know what you guys think or what you guys are seeing.
Has anyone been following that specifically, going to those?
I think like there are 2 components that I noticed. One was about gender and race that was brought very clearly, and especially in the past few days, I think, both in the blue zone and in the green zone as well. I participated in an event like I think yesterday in the blue zone with the Minister of Women in Brazil, like pushing forward very, very firmly on these issues. But also in terms of the negotiators, I have heard from in several of the rooms, concerns about the language that had been used in the document, to try to be a little more descriptive and and more concrete. I think it was like not only words. I don't think it made it through the documents though. So that's why I was saying earlier that I feel like one of the legacies that I'm expecting this COP to have is actually the process and bringing this topic to the agenda more forcefully than previous, and hopefully we make progress in the next rounds of negotiation.
So I just wanted to add to what Edson said. I also went to a couple events on gender, and one of the, I think, cool things about the Brazilian presidency running this COP is that Lula is really committed to gender equality. So there's like a minister of gender or women, and I'm not sure how it translates exactly, but I was like, that's really cool. And they also have another minister of like racial equality, and a minister of environment, and they're all coming together to work on their own NDC. Like their own NDC has a very strong women component to it. I actually have the book here that let's see if I can. So I'll show you that. Okay, this is on Brazil's plan, but this influences what a lot of them were talking about. Is they hope that this stuff gets into the final agreement as well. So we'll see if that happens or not. Other thoughts? Next question.
Hi, I'm Kendall. I am super unfamiliar with the specifics of COP, but it's been really neat to hear what you guys have all had to say. Has there been anything in the past couple days that you've been there that you have not experienced, that you're excited or hopeful you get to see or witness or be a part of kind of in the last final days?
Margaret, you have the microphone right there. Oh.
Is that compared like this COP to previous COPs?
No, just something that you're like excited about or about this particular COP. Is that right, Kendall?
Yeah, just kind of in the final 2 days, is there anything you're hoping you get to see or experience that you haven't yet?
Oh, okay. So one thing that I thought was very interesting in one of the side events was concrete ideas for how to funnel the money for adaptation and for the energy transition through to the small and medium enterprises. So there was an initiative from the Ministry of Entrepreneurship in Brazil, and I thought it was quite interesting to see how they were providing examples of how the money could potentially get to these small businesses, which I hadn't heard before. I think like when you talk about energy transition in general, they're talking about the biggest polluters, and of course they are responsible for most of the emissions, but solutions can be found on the ground with very small businesses, and they don't get anything out of this. The second part was thinking about that I was, I guess, surprised a little bit. I didn't know about my own country. Was about the energy mix here in Brazil. It has been really I think like a canary in a coal mine in terms of how there are challenges and opportunities for the energy transition. Brazil has been quite dependent on hydro for a while, and then they reduced a lot. Like it was like from 90% to about like 43% now. Droughts and many challenges. At the same time, they, instead of going full force into fossil fuels, they invested a lot in solar and wind and geothermal, and we have like 90% again of the energy mix renewable. So I think like that was a huge surprise, and I hope that that's an example of how other countries could potentially go about that.
I'll make this really quick and pass the mic to someone else. But one of the things that did surprise me was the announcement, this happened last week, of the Tropical Forest Forever Facility, TFFF, lots of acronyms at COP. And I initially was envisioning this like center or place of like one forest, but it's actually across countries, that those countries that have tropical primary forests, that they have finance to protect them, because when they're not protected, they get taken down for timber, agriculture, and so on. And that's a really, really important thing that we need to do moving forward. And we have an important need to, there's a declaration to reverse deforestation and by 2030, and then be on the other side globally, that we need to be adding more trees to the planet. So I think that was surprising to see that, and it was really delightful. Emma, how about?
Something I'm surprised or still want to see. Either one.
Either.
I haven't been to the green zone yet because I had blue zone access early. So if it's open tomorrow, in particular, because I've heard from those who have been that there are a lot of Brazilian biofuel companies there that I'm interested in chatting with. Yeah.
I have blue zone access tomorrow. It's the final day of COP. I'm curious what that's going to be like, if it's going to be like, and prior to the fire today, I was, very excited about what it would look like on the last formal day. They will likely extend, and what, wrapping up might feel like. Hopefully I'll get the chance for that.
I'm going to ask you to say one more thing because you mentioned, was it yesterday or the day before, about getting into a session that was surprising. Like you ended up being able to be part, like watch a negotiation happen. That was a surprising moment for you.
I was sitting next or behind the G7 and China, specifically like Saudi Arabia and Russia, which tend to be some of the people who hold more progressive climate, or parties who hold more of the progressive climate policy back. And it was very interesting to really hear their strategizing, hear their group come together. They let me hear it, which was, I thought they were going to ask me to stop taking notes or something, but no. And so that was, a very big surprise of what that pushback looks like in action that we hear about.
There's a hand.
I'm going to go first, Laura. Sorry.
Okay, fine. Sorry. What did you hear? What was their strategizing?
Well, their strategy. So one of the co-chairs for the negotiations wasn't there, and they seemed to not want to have the negotiations at all without that person. They didn't trust the co-chair that was present. They didn't. Yeah, it was that like it was a facilitation level kind of discussion. They also wound up leaving the room for a while, and so I was just sitting observing an empty room, which also I don't know what the precedent is for that. It was also like they were very unwilling, or at least slow, to kind of leave their own cluster and group. Because they also, I think, have to reach consensus as a unit because of their group identity, label, structure.
Lydia, do you want to jump in on that? Because I know you also got into a negotiation. You were like the only observer in one, right? Do you want to say anything about that?
It was a press conference. I was able to sit in on a press conference with the Secretary General of the UN, which is very exciting. I will remember that forever. I don't think I was supposed to be there. But yeah, it was very exciting to see. He was essentially calling for more action to occur, and yeah, it was just very exciting to see, and I kind of was starstruck.
I'm interested to hear who you all have been interacting with, and also if there's been any interesting reaction to when they learn that you're from Boston College.
Great question. Go ahead.
Well, on a slightly humorous note, while everyone else hopefully thinks of a serious answer, I met a UN employee whose daughter hopes to come to Boston College. So we had a nice chat about that.
I'll also just jump in. It's sort of a funny situation. I was sitting in one event and a woman sat down next to me, and it was like, I don't know, after 10 minutes or so, I saw her talking to someone else, and I realized, oh my gosh, I went to graduate school with you. We were in the same cohort. I'm like, oh my gosh. So we got to catch up. That doesn't really answer your question, Greg, but you do end up like seeing people that sometimes that or then some famous people too. But
then like who you're interacting and what is the interaction that you're from BC. So one just funny, I guess, we were at the US it's all in event with the former negotiators, and Catherine was there. So I asked her a question and I said, well, I'm a faculty at Boston College, and she smiled. It's like, ah. And then, I think it was like a moment that, people were just like wondering why. Of course, she's an alumni, but it was funny. The other place that was kind of interesting, I was in this event, the side event from the Ministry of Entrepreneurship, and I was initially talking to the people who would be in the panel because it was kind of late, typical. And they were very puzzled. I was Brazilian, but I'm not living in Brazil, and I'm here for COP. Like, so, and I said Boston College. Like, oh my God, like I've been there a few times, and I wonder if we can connect next time I go to Boston. And it was kind of interesting to have that reaction.
Phil, do you want to talk about the women that
Well, the first day on Monday, I was just kind of so struck by how like friendly and like outgoing and wanting to make friends people were. Abby, I was standing next to Abby in line for lunch, and she turned around and started talking to this man from Malawi, and we ended up just sitting on the floor having our lentil burgers. And it was so fun. He was like from an NGO, and he was talking to us about his work there. Another time I was waiting for Mexico to announce their new updated NDC, and sitting on the floor next to someone from Colombia who was the CEO of his NGO, and started talking to him. And when he asked what delegation I was from, I was like, "Oh, Boston College." He asked where we got our funding, so I had to explain that. Um, because he was like, "Yeah, I don't know if the government's giving you any of that." So I had to talk about that for a little bit, which was honestly really good. And then today, we were in the green zone, and we met a student from Brazil who was studying international relations similarly to me. So I connected with her over that too. So overall, I've just been really like impressed about how friendly people are and wanting to make connections. Everyone has their LinkedIn out. So yeah, it's been great.
I've strangely met a lot of people from the Boston area, which like it was not intentional or like deliberate. But I met somebody on Monday, which was like our first day in the blue zone from MIT, and he just was getting back to the States today. And hearing about the fire, he emailed like everybody he met and just like CC'd everyone. Like, I heard I'm back in the States. I just want to make sure everyone's doing good. And yeah, it was very sweet. And today Emma and I wound up going to a park with somebody that we had met who came to the panel that we were on. So I feel like people are eager to connect and care, not in, sometimes there's like an inauthentic networking kind of feel to conferences just generally. And I have not felt that at all here. So I think people are, they hear Boston College and either they know it or they ask about it. And that's been great.
Just to echo what Abby said, I think this has been the most authentic networking I've ever experienced. People really want to connect and do something meaningful and not just connect for their own like kind of selfish reasons. Not that, I mean, we all do that, but and that's just been really like beautiful and heartwarming.
Okay, well, I think in the interest of time, we can close with one last question for the delegates. What has given you the most hope during COP30?
I can start. So I was lucky enough to go to 3 different sessions that all heavily featured Marina Silva, who's the Minister of the Environment in Brazil, talking about a roadmap to ending fossil fuels, and love hearing that. And it just, hearing world leaders like talk about that and people engage with that, and thinking that like there could be an end to fossil fuels, which I really hope comes to fruition someday in my lifetime, was just really, really inspiring and gave me a lot of hope.
Yeah, it's sort of surreal to be there and just turning around and hearing different languages like all over. And what gave me hope is just like seeing how everyone came together, like, and also just the youth that presence that was there. I was surprised at how many other student delegates were there. I had the ability to go to one side event that was youth entrepreneurship, and just hearing other youth talk about what they're doing was really exciting. Yeah, it gave me a lot of hope. I think I just referring to like Adson's point of like the muchidon. I really love this term and I hear it like all the time because I feel like collaboration and collective working is really important. Especially I feel like a lot of sessions emphasize on like the intersectionality of either like technologies where like politics and in and out of like the negotiation room. So I just feel like really passionate about like hoping to see like more muchidons in the future.
Um, so obviously there's country pavilions, everyone's from a specific nationality or representing a certain delegation, and so there's individuality within that, but there's also such universal values here. I think I've heard like the same phrases in multiple different languages, the same buzzwords passing around, whether or not it's being translated into my ears or I'm just hearing it from one of my fellow delegates here. There's such like an underlying value set that transcends borders and cultures, all to come together to solve the climate crisis. So that's just been so inspiring to me and giving me hope for the future.
Yeah, I guess I'll echo everyone's point here. I think it's been really heartwarming, I guess, to meet so many people that really believe that the work being done here and the work being done by groups in the communities can change the course that we're on, because I feel like a lot of times when, I don't know, in my classes when we're studying these topics, like they're really heavy, dark topics, and if you get too in the weeds about it, like you could just spiral into a really nasty place. But I feel like people here, they understand that, and they understand the impact that that could have on us, and believe that as a world, I guess, as a society, we can come together and really make change happen and not just talk about change, and talk about the stats and talk about the numbers of, well, it's this year and this is how much emissions we have to reduce by, but more bring that hope to the negotiation table is really exciting.
I think a place that gives me hope from COP is kind of where policy making and implementation like meet. Thinking about like as kind of dry and as the negotiations can be, I think the power of it is how they make like what people are doing on the ground like officially formally recognized and critical, all of the work of activists, big and small. And so I find that that is very powerful and a generative place in COP.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of little things that add up that give me hope, and a lot of it's come with interacting with all the people that you come across from all over the globe here, and I think despite there not being a big decision or agreement yet on some of the negotiations, like there's been constant like talk from the delegates that there's been a lot of progress over the last 2 weeks, and it gives me a lot of hope that even if not everything is agreed upon in this COP, that there has been a lot of progress. And like Edson was saying, the process of bringing more people in and facing it a little bit more head on and with more rigor. So hopefully the next couple COPs are kind of similar in that regard. And yeah, I think there's hope that even though in the United States it feels like climate change work is dead or unappreciated, like it is happening in every other corner of the world, and there's ways that we can contribute to that from the US. And so like I encourage you to see how you can connect with efforts across the globe.
I think what gives me hope is that even with all the headwinds that this COP has been facing with the formal absence of the US in the negotiation table, other countries have come together, and even though it might not feel progress, but it's like different parties coming together, creating coalitions, including to phase out fossil fuels that has been talked very openly, including developing countries, which I thought was almost impossible a few months ago. I think that's like super positive. And also, I think in terms of process, like I feel topics that were kind of taboo are becoming mainstream. I think that is like gives me hope that maybe we are not going to see the progress that we were expecting in this document coming out of like the next few days, but the topics are here, and I think they come with a full force to potentially stay for the next few COPs.
So what gives me hope from this COP is that women's issues and the value of women to society has really had its time in the sun for this COP. And I expect to see real progress in providing women with more access to credit, more financing. We were at a session today where a minister said, men out there, like if you are not willing to share household responsibilities, like we're gonna step in and do something about it. I've never heard anything like that before from a government official, because women have an incredible amount of burden. They're the most impacted by climate change, but they're also don't feel that they're empowered to make changes if they can't get money or make decisions about their farms. And this is now known at a bigger level. So I feel really hopeful. Women make up 50% of the human population, but have been suppressed. And I think one comment I heard a lot was, you can't have climate justice without social justice, without gender equality specifically, but also racial equality as well. So that gave me a lot of hope. And I want to sort of give the last word to Kaylee here. Kaylee has been our fearless leader for 2 weeks. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Kaylee, for everything you've done for us. And I want to pass the mic to you for anything that you find hope from this experience.
I've just been creeping off in the corner for space, but hi, it's good to see you all. So I think, in addition to echoing a lot of what everyone's added here, something that I've found very hopeful is even if we don't see exactly what we would like to see in the actual official agreements, all of these smaller interactions that people are talking about the authenticity of people wanting to connect, it's really hard to like quantify and to map what will happen from all of those relationships and all of those small conversations and all of the collaborations that could come from it. And there's so much more going on here than what actually gets finalized in the agreement. And I'm coming back, I know, with lots of things that I've already texted Greg, and I'm like, I have big dreams for what I want to bring back to BC. And he's like, all right, let's see what happens. So I hope a lot of people go back to their spaces feeling that way. And that brings me a lot of hope too. And thank you so much for coming. I hope to see you all. I didn't mean to get the last word, but thank you. And it has been a joy to travel with all of you and to get to know you and all of your passion. And like, there's a lot of hope in this room too. So thank you so much.